Something we haven't talked about since the suppression hearings ended in the Luigi Mangione case is the illegal wiretap in the police station and how Officer Diaz basically had to retract his appearance in court after that revelation came out about the illegal wiretapping. Let's get into the details a little bit again about the suppression hearings in New York against Luigi Mangione and a couple of the bombshells that came out that I haven't publicly talked about before. The devil's in the details. Let's do this breakdown now. Pay attention. Now, once again, before we get too far into this, make sure you like and you subscribe. Subscribe right now to this channel because I'm going to have a lot of Luigi stuff coming up. Every single week, I'm going to do a Luigi piece on Fridays. I've got lives that we talk about Luigi. And if you're into that case, you're going to want to subscribe to this channel and make sure you don't miss it because you'll be sorry you did when we get into the really good stuff, the legal breakdowns, attorneys that come on my show and talk about it, all those good things. And I also have other cases that I follow, like Idaho 4, Mickey Steins, Long Island serial killer, all kinds of other cases that we're covering. You want to follow those as well, maybe. If not, just subscribe to the playlist for Luigi Mangione. Let's get into the details about this. Now, there was a suppression hearing that lasted, and I call them suppression hearings. I don't know what the official title of it was, but the suppression hearings in the case against Luigi Mangione took place for 3 weeks, the better part of 3 weeks. And as Karen Agnifilo will tell us in this clip that I'm going to play for you, those suppression hearings should have taken about a half day. So why, once again, in Luigi Mangione's case, do we have to treat him differently than anybody else in America and take what should have been a half day of testimony and turn it into 3 days of testimony? I want to break down two major things that Karen Agnifilo states in this press conference. I'm going to play the clip for you first, and then I'm going to read an article talking about it a bit, and then I'm going to reiterate something I've said from the very, very beginning that I don't entirely understand, which is that the arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania, regardless of how you feel about Luigi Mangione, that arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania was an illegal arrest. I believe Karen Agnifilo made a masterful explanation of why it was an illegal arrest. His attorney in Pennsylvania, Thomas Dickey, made a masterful explanation of why it was an illegal arrest. And I know that some people who watch my channel, just a couple actually, don't think that it was illegal, but it is 100% illegal. I read the law in Pennsylvania, and I read the appellate court law in Pennsylvania. And the funny thing is as I was watching Karen Agnifilo talk about what I'm going to show you here in a second, I was surprised she didn't hit it harder. I thought, did I miss something? So I went back and I looked again. Like, here's how I understand the law. That's an illegal arrest all day long, every day, and twice on Sunday. Let's talk about first what Karen Agnifilo said, and then we'll get down to the breakdown.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, we want to thank everyone for coming and for sitting through a 3-week mini trial that should have been a half a day. MAP hearings and Huntley hearings to suppress statements and evidence usually take a half a day, maybe a day. We were told this was going to be several days, but this went on for 3 weeks unnecessarily, and lots of witnesses were called. And in fact, today we were fully expecting the case detective, Detective Diaz, to testify. And it was only after Lieutenant Leonardi testified about the illegal wiretap of Mr. Mangione in Altoona, Pennsylvania, that they withdrew statement notice, and now suddenly we're not going to have the lead case detective in this case. It's significant. There was a lot of open questions that we wanted to question him about, especially the very prejudicial statement made by the chief of detectives at the time. There was a press conference a year ago where they were talking about all the probable cause and the reasons they had to believe that Mr. Mangione committed this crime. And one of those things was that they relied on a statement made by his mother that she said she could see him doing something like this. That's an absolutely false statement. That was never said. And in fact, we asked for discovery regarding that. The prosecution told us they gave us all the discovery. We've even subpoenaed materials from San Francisco Police Department. There is no such statement. It was never made. In fact, it was the opposite. What Mrs. Mangione said was that she could never see her son being a risk to himself or others. And we put that on the record again today, and that still has not been corrected by either the NYPD or the Manhattan DA's office. That's a prejudicial statement that has been repeated many, many times. And yes, I'm repeating it here, but because you all have published this over and over and over again, because this was an essential piece of information that Detective Kenny said was relied upon by the NYPD in this case. So we want the NYPD or the San Francisco PD or the Manhattan DA to correct this very prejudicial statement that was never said. So thank you very much for coming.
Why did this Mrs. Mangione about that?
So thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate it all, and we'll see you again soon.
Why did this pre-trial?
All right, let's talk about a couple of those things right now. Prejudicial statements made by Luigi Mangione's mother, who said, allegedly, this is the kind of thing I could see my son doing. That's what was published out into the public shortly after the arrest of Luigi Mangione, that even his own mother essentially turned on him. Now, I want to point this out in detail today for you. Years ago, in 2012, I had a session about a case of a shooting in Aurora, Colorado by a man allegedly by the name of James Egan Holm. Now, I say allegedly. His name is not allegedly James Egan Holm. It is James Egan Holm. Allegedly, he was the shooter. He was convicted of that shooting. So why do I keep saying allegedly? Geez, that case is nuts. I'll put it all aside. What happened in that case is the same thing that happened in this case, and I'll tell you what it was. Early in that case, in the case of James Egan Holm, his mother, Arlene, was called in the middle of the night after the shooting. The shooting happened around midnight. I think it was 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, local time. Can't remember what time zone she was in. She was called and awoken out of bed by a news reporter who said, "Is this Arlene Holmes?" I think it was Arlene was her name. "Is this Arlene Holmes, mother of James Egan Holmes?" Her response was, "Yes, you've got the right person." And then they continue to say, "It looks like your son may have been involved in a shooting in Aurora, Colorado." And the breaking news the next day is when news reporters called Arlene Holmes to inform her that her son was arrested in connection with a shooting in Aurora, Colorado, she said, "You've got the right person." That's how that got interpreted. That's literally how it went out there. She got so pissed, she had to hire a legal team, or she went on with, I don't know if she hired them, but she appeared on TV, on the news, with an attorney by her side and said, basically, "Screw you guys. That's not how that conversation went. I literally said, I'm Arlene Holmes, the mother of James Egan Holmes. That's the right person. You got the right person. I am his mother. I never said the person that you arrested in that shooting is the right person for the shooting, like you tried to make it sound." Now comes this same thing in Luigi Mangione's case. In Luigi Mangione's case, they said, even his own mother said, that's the kind of thing I can see my son doing. If you listen to what Karen Agnifilo just said at this press conference, that is a lie, a flat out lie. Now, originally, I was careful to not comment on this because what Karen Agnifilo said at first was, prove to me not Arlene, prove to me that Luigi Mangione's mother said those words. There's nothing in the discovery about it, and they couldn't provide the discovery. That's not the same thing necessarily as saying his mother never said those words. Now Karen is actually saying flat out, his mother not only never said those words, she said the exact opposite. She said, that's not something I can see my son doing. It's not the kind of thing I can see my son doing. Yet they put it out in the news as his own mother said that's exactly the kind of thing I could see my son doing, to be a prejudicial statement. Karen Agnifilo now is correcting this thing. It's not just a matter of it isn't in the discovery, but she's actually saying now that Luigi's mother said the opposite. That's an actual statement now. It's not just you can't prove she said this thing. It's like, I can tell you she said the opposite of that. That's a huge difference, a huge change. I also want to point out for those who are the Luigi Mangione fans that Karen Agnifilo is not making any wording in this press conference that suggests that Luigi Mangione is going to plead some kind of temporary insanity, right? So there's an argument to be made, and I've made it before, why the defense is setting up a certain scenario that might allow Luigi Mangione to use the extreme emotional distress, or EED, defense in the state case. Luigi Mangione is facing charges in both the state of New York and the federal government in New York. If you don't understand those things, you need to watch more of my videos. Another call to subscribe to the channel so you can get boned up on the legal documents and understand the differences between Pennsylvania law, New York state law, federal law in the Southern District of New York. You need to understand all those because Luigi Mangione is facing criminal charges in 3 jurisdictions simultaneously. Now, the point being is that to finish up this particular one, Karen Agnifilo made this argument about the mother saying the absolute opposite. That's a big one. She's also not hinting at any kind of extreme emotional defense, because she repeatedly says, one of the entire reasons they think my guy did the shooting is because of this, and that's not true. So she's not conceding, and no part at all is Karen Agnifilo conceding that Luigi Mangione is the shooter and that they're going to go for some kind of extreme emotional defense. She's saying the whole reason why you think he shot this person is in part because of this statement you think his mother made, and she never made that statement. So maybe he didn't ever do anything. That's part of that argument. Now let's set aside the one that's really, really difficult. And I'm going to bring up a document in a minute to show you the actual, like a newspaper recording of it. One of the things that drives me nuts is during the suppression hearings that lasted for 3 weeks, and as she said, it should have lasted like a half a day at best. They were, I expected the defense. I expected the defense to argue very, very strongly in the courtroom that that was an illegal arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Let me try to be brief, and I'm not good at it, on the reason why. Again, in Pennsylvania, according to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it is not illegal to provide false identification to a police officer, either by name or even by a fake driver's license, unless you have been informed that you're under investigation. Let me repeat it one more time. It is not illegal in the state of, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to provide false identification to a police officer, either by name or in driver's license, unless you've been informed that you're under investigation for a crime. That did not happen in Altoona, Pennsylvania for 17 minutes. And once the officer actually said, you are now under investigation for the shooting in New York, do you want to continue to talk to us and give us that fake name? He said no. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to give the fake name. Once he had been informed that he was under investigation, just like the law says in Pennsylvania, he said no. So they said, you have now been informed you're under investigation. Do you want to keep giving us that name? He said no. They also didn't read him his Miranda rights for those 17 minutes. Again, not informing him of his right to remain silent. So we're going to talk about that illegal arrest. We're going to talk about the illegal wiretap. That was the shocker that came out of this. So I'm trying to figure out which way to do it in. So let's talk first about well, since I've spent so much time building it up, let's talk about the illegal arrest, and then we'll talk about the wiretap on the way out. The illegal arrest, what I expected Karen to do was hammer it heavily, how it was illegal. And I didn't understand why in the courtroom, Karen allows the prosecution to continually bring on their witnesses to say that it was a legal arrest, that they were arresting and detaining Luigi Mangione incident to arrest. And it was a lawful stop. It was a perfectly lawful stop, and everything they did was legal. And I'm thinking to myself, Karen, why are you not all over this? You know it's illegal. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe I read an old law. Like, I literally read law in my video. I read the law, the Pennsylvania law, many times on screen. I've had lawyers look at it and tell me I'm right about how I interpreted it. I've had cops on here that tell me I'm right about how I interpreted it. I've read it multiple times. I even read appellate courts that upheld that rule. When a police officer stopped somebody and didn't inform they were under investigation and gave them false identification and tried to arrest them anyways, the appellate court said, you can't do that. That's our law. Our law says they are allowed to give you false identification. Sorry. It's been upheld. So why isn't Karen hitting it further? So again, I questioned myself when she didn't hit it harder and allowed people for 3 weeks to come on the stand and not really question about whether or not it was legal. I did confirm. Once again, I'm not missing anything. I've confirmed. I did a little chat GPT foo and said, look, as I understand Pennsylvania law, it's not illegal to provide false identification to a police officer unless you've been informed under arrest. Is that not true? And why didn't Karen say something about it? And they said, you're right. It's not illegal. And you're right. Karen didn't bring it up. And here's what the prosecution's trying to do. They're essentially trying to get it past you and the public that it was illegal, because most people believe commonly that it's against the law to provide false identification to a police officer. So if they just say it enough times, people will believe it's true. So they're just saying it. Now, oddly enough, why isn't Karen attacking that and saying that's not true? It's not illegal, blah, blah, blah. Why? That's the part I'm not 100% sold on, but I will tell you this. Karen Agnifilo already made a major filing about why it was illegal, that arrest was illegal. And that was kind of part of that whole big filing. So it's already in writing. Maybe that's the idea. She's already got it in writing, and they're going to attack it again. They've got until like January 29th or something like that to file another response to the judge about this arrest. But it is confirmed. Again, law enforcement are trying to use a loophole on why it was totally legal to do what they did, but technically by law it's not legal, and it's been upheld by the appellate courts in Pennsylvania. So all of that is true. it's just interesting to watch Karen not deal with it right now. I'm suspecting she is going to deal with it soon. I suspect that. But let's talk about the other shocker that came out, which is that Officer Diaz. Now, who's Officer Diaz? In Altoona, Pennsylvania, when Luigi Mangione was arrested in the McDonald's and taken back to the Altoona Police Department, a police officer from New York City, NYPD detective Oscar Diaz, showed up mysteriously at Altoona, Pennsylvania, at the police department and helped sign a search warrant about the inventory of Luigi Mangione's bag. And I thought it was weird when I said it. I said, what the hell is Officer Diaz from NYPD doing in Altoona, Pennsylvania during an Altoona arrest? Why did they send NYPD to Altoona, Pennsylvania? That was a complete shocker to me. But even more of a shocker was Officer Diaz pulled his testimony and didn't testify in this suppression hearing. He was scheduled. I was looking forward to it. During the suppression hearings, I was looking forward to hearing what Oscar Diaz has to say about why the fuck are you in Altoona, Pennsylvania in the first place? Why are you signing the inventory of Luigi Mangione in Altoona, Pennsylvania? How's that have anything to do with NYPD, really? Like, I was just curious. Maybe there is a reason, but I was curious. But more so, I was shocked to find out that Officer Diaz didn't testify. And the reason being is because it came out before he was set to testify that Manjone was illegally wiretapped while in holding. So let's talk about that just a little bit more. All right, we're going to pull up on screen this article from the Los Angeles Magazine. Manjone's suppression hearings conclude as judge sets a decision date. Defense also challenges the uncorrected statement attributed to Manjone's mother as both sides risked after 9 days of testimony. By the way, in case you don't know, as an aside, I keep saying Manjone. I know some people say Mangione. I know there's Manjone. There's all kinds of ways to say Luigi Manjone's name. It's a long story. I'm going to say Luigi Mangione most of the time. It could be Mangione, depending on... Anyways, it's an aside. All right, so what we've got here is some notes that I wanted to point out from the suppression hearings, 9 days of suppression hearings, which, as you heard, Karen said should have been done in a half a day. After 9 days of testimony from Altoona police officers, members of Blair County District Attorney's Office, and the NYPD ADA, Joel Seidemann, announced that the people would not call additional witnesses. By the way, the prosecution called witnesses for 3 straight weeks, and the defense called no one. I found that super, super interesting. And again, I'm not a lawyer, and I know that Agnifilo is a masterful lawyer, so I know she's got to have something up her sleeve that I don't even fully understand. Not a single person was called, although she said, we were looking forward to cross-examining a couple of the officers that didn't get to testify, because once it came out that they did an illegal wiretap, well, they decided to take back their whole statement. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about. The defense, which did not call any witnesses throughout the hearings, rested as well. That's, again, that surprise that I was like, how the hell did they not call any defense, any people? But so this went on for 3 weeks unnecessarily. This is, again, part of that statement you heard Karen saying, that the suppression hearings went on for 3 weeks unnecessarily, and lots of witnesses were called. And today, we were expecting Case Detective Diaz from NYPD to testify. And it was only after Lieutenant Leonardi testified about the illegal wiretap of Mr. Mangione in Altoona, Pennsylvania, that they withdrew the statement notice, and now we're not going to have the lead case detective in the case. So Karen Agnifilo and her team was ready to cross-examine Detective Diaz on the stand about his involvement in the arrest, and because they basically done fucked up, as I say sometimes, and Lieutenant Leonardi admitted that they did an illegal wiretap of Luigi Mangione, they, meaning the prosecution, decided to pull the idea of having Officer Diaz testify because they effed up. She was referring to Tuesday's testimony by NYPD Lieutenant David Leonardi. So this is another NYPD person. He testified, who disclosed that Mangione was both audio and video recorded without his knowledge and briefly without police present or a lawyer while in Altoona. The district attorney's office later confirmed it would withdraw all statements from the Pennsylvania interrogation. So Luigi Mangione was interrogated without, and he was recorded secretly in audio and video coverage of him without a lawyer present, without police even present, like listening to him talk to himself or whatever the case may be. Point being is that he was recorded without the proper format. Pennsylvania has a 2-person rule that 2 people have to be present during that recording to basically confirm that it's not illegal. That didn't happen. He was all alone. They did not tell him he was being recorded. All of the things, they made a mistake. Judge Caro set January 29th as a deadline for written submissions for Manjone's attorneys and March 5th for the prosecution's response, and reiterated that he expects to issue a ruling on May 18th. There appears to be confusion, and this is going to continue this whole thing about the case that I want to point out. There appears to be confusion with media because New York law is different than Pennsylvania law. My office has argued in filed public documents and continues to assert that Altoona police officers lawfully arrested Manjone. So again, they're saying there seems to be confusion about this arrest. Yes, there is confusion. I am confused as well, because it seems to be illegal to do what you did to Luigi Mangione, and the defense hasn't really said much about it in the courtroom, but they did in legal filings. So anyways, so this person is saying, hey, there seems to be a lot of confusion about New York law versus Pennsylvania law. My office has argued and filed public documents and continues to assert that Altoona police officers lawfully arrested Manjone for crimes that he allegedly committed in Pennsylvania in the presence of officers. What was the crime Luigi Mangione committed in front of officers in Pennsylvania? I would argue the only crime they can even remotely suggest that he committed in front of law enforcement officers in Pennsylvania was providing false information to an officer by saying that his name was Mark Rosario, a crime which is not illegal in Pennsylvania. We've covered this, and you can watch my breakdowns where I get into it ad nauseum. Anyways, because of his arrest, he and his property were then subject to a legal warrantless search incident to arrest. That's what the prosecution is trying to say. Look, Luigi Mangione's illegal search, as you maintain, was totally legal because it was a search incident to arrest. It's a term that we've broke down as well on our show. We have an NYPD officer, by the way. We have an NYPD officer who's on my show, on my panel on a regular basis every single night. Every night, NYPD officer in our show who has told you and will tell you again about what it means to have an arrest incident or an incident to arrest, a search, a warrantless search incident to arrest, and what that means and how it doesn't apply to Luigi Mangione. This is a great channel, by the way. You're missing out. You need to subscribe immediately if you haven't done so. We've got experts, we've got attorneys, we've got police officers, we've got all kinds of people that inform these cases and tell you this is where they done effed up. So the point being that I just want to end with, and there's a nice shot of anyways, Russell Brand. The point being is that I just wanted to say once again, it was something I wanted to comment on. Illegal wiretapping kind of was a new shocker I hadn't seen, that they had illegally wiretapped Manjone and recorded him in the holding in Pennsylvania. That was new. And when that came out, apparently Officer Diaz from NYPD isn't going to testify anymore. So that was super interesting. The statements that now Karen is saying, not only is it that you can't prove Manjone's mother said, yeah, my son is the kind of person who would do that. I can see him being that person. Not only did she not say that, you can't prove that she did, but we're telling you flat out, she said the opposite. She said, my son's not the kind of person that she could ever see harming somebody or doing something like that. The opposite. And it's a prejudicial statement that continues to be out there. Karen Agnifilo has hammered a million times how they are prejudicing the public against her client, Luigi Mangione, making people believe before he ever steps foot in his first day of the actual trial that he's guilty before he walks into the courtroom. That's how we do things in America. We now convict people in the court of public opinion using mainstream narrative tactics, mainstream media, law enforcement saying things, prosecution saying things to the media, so that it gets repeated out there in the public over and over again, and you believe the guy's guilty before he ever sets foot in a courtroom. And oftentimes that's how that goes once you get there, because they've already been prejudiced. We'll see if Luigi Mangione's attorneys can offer up a masterful defense. Keep watching our channel. We'll break down all the legal documents. We'll have attorneys on here. We'll have NYPD talk about NYPD's arrest and involvement and all that stuff like that on this show. Subscribe again on the way out. Check it out. Talk to you later.